In today's video, I'm going to share 5 huge mistakes I made as a beginner so that you don't have to. If you are a beginner, this one you don't want to skip. And I truly believe that anyone who's been in this hobby for a long time will tell you the same. High-tech aquariums can look amazing. The beautiful colors, the complicated hardscape structures, and the cool-looking equipment is exactly what I wanted in the beginning. I saw videos of stunning iwagumis and diorama-style tanks, and I wanted to be able to create something like that so badly. Because of that, I focused all my attention on high-tech equipment and high-tech practices, and that was a mistake. I had kept fish before, but never plants, at least not thriving ones. And because I focused on high-tech, I skipped a lot of the basics, things that I had to learn slowly over the years. With high-tech, you learn to use a lot of equipment and materials without really knowing what's actually necessary and what your aquarium could thrive without. For example, something that saves me a lot of money today, and I've mentioned this many times before, so I won't go into details, is the size of the filter. Being able to use small canisters and even cascade filters for bigger tanks is currently saving me a lot of money. That's something I wouldn't have understood early on. I've also run into problems that I would have known how to solve if I had started with a low-tech aquarium. Because low-tech teaches you what is actually necessary to keep plants healthy. It strips everything down to the essentials and forces you to understand how your tank really works. My advice is to start with easy plants and simple setups. Don't rely on a lot of equipment in the beginning. Focus more on the natural look and understanding what's going on. Once you master that, you'll be much more prepared to take on high-tech systems. Guys, if you're just starting out, I wouldn't use stuff from the wild. At least don't add it to your main tank. I know there are a lot of ways to sterilize things, whether it's hardscape, plants, or even fish, but none of those quarantine methods are guaranteed to work. And you can introduce something into your aquarium that causes a crash. That's the kind of thing that can make people quit this beautiful hobby. Let me give you an example with stones. There are stones in the wild that can release a lot of silicates into the water, which will almost certainly lead to brown algae. And that algae won't really go away until you remove the stone. Plants can be tricky too. Unless you are experienced, it can be hard to tell the difference between aquatic and terrestrial plants. A lot of aquatic plants in the wild grow immersed, with parts of them outside the water. So it's very easy to pick something that looks right, but it's not. If you end up adding terrestrial plants into your aquarium, they will melt. And unless your filtration is very strong, that can lead to a persistent ammonia spike. Now, when it comes to fish, it can be even worse. First of all, make sure it's actually legal to collect fish where you are. And if it is, identifying species in the wild can be very difficult, especially with nanofish. You could very easily end up bringing home something that looks small now, but grows much bigger than you expect. So instead of improving your tank, you just created a problem. If you want to experiment with things from the wild, do it in a separate aquarium that's meant for that, not in your main tank, especially in the beginning. It's just not worth the risk. If you guys are enjoying the video, remember to like and subscribe. And remember that only throughout this month, we have a 20% off deal on Luigi Albalis. There'll be a link in the description for that. If you're anything like me, you'll see a fish that looks amazing and immediately fall in love with it. Then you find out that it's a delicate species, not recommended for beginners. Would that stop you? Nah. You do a ton of research until you feel prepared. But let me tell you this, no amount of research beats experience. You might have experience keeping fish, but keeping fish in a heavily planted tank with lots of thriving plant species is a completely different thing. Like I said before, I don't recommend starting with high-tech, but if you do, now you're dealing with CO2, fertilizers, salts, high-intensity lighting, big filters, and all of that changes how fish experience the aquarium. Some of these things, like CO2, can straight up kill your fish if not used properly. It adds a whole extra layer of difficulty. Some species also require very high temperature, and those temperatures are not ideal for a planted aquarium. Higher temperatures can speed things up in a tank, and that often leads to algae problems. I made this mistake myself. I started with delicate species and I lost some of them. And looking back, I regret getting them so early in my aquarium journey. That's why I want to encourage you not to do the same. Start with hardy fish. They might not be the most impressive or eye-catching at first, but they will actually thrive while you're still learning. And once you understand your tank better, then you can move on to more delicate species without risking them. I used to do this all the time. There was a specific type of scape that I really liked, the forest style. The one where you have small sand pathways going from the foreground to the background, usually ending on a focal point. I loved those kind of scapes so much that my first aquascape was basically a failed attempt at that. I bought way too little hardscape, so the tank ended up looking quite empty, and I also had a lot of algae problems. Which brings me to the point of this tip. What I hated the most was the algae on the white sand. It was so noticeable, and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of it. I wasn't experienced enough back then to understand what was causing it, so I came up with an idea that I thought was smart at the time. Once the sand got overtaken by algae, I would grab a hose, remove all the sand, and then add new sand. Problem solved, right? That's actually the original issue that sparked my idea of an aquarium vacuum. I thought to create a tool that could remove the sand without removing water, but now I know better. Any surface in your aquarium is home to beneficial bacteria, and that includes your sand. So by removing all your sand, you are drastically reducing your aquarium's filtration. My advice here is not to jump to extreme solutions. Don't be too afraid of algae. Take the time to understand it, because once you do, you'll know how to reduce it to a point where it's not even visible, instead of having to remove it. If you're just starting out in planted aquariums, try not to rely too much on advice from pet stores. I've personally gotten some really bad advice from shops. I remember one time I got recommended regular need-eye snails over horned need-eye snails as algae eaters. If you've ever kept both of them, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's not that they are trying to mislead you. What I think happens, and this is just my opinion, I could be wrong, aquascaping isn't that big here in the US, so a lot of people working in stores don't have much experience with heavily planted tanks. They might be very knowledgeable about fish, but planted aquariums are a completely different thing. Now, if you live somewhere where aquascaping is more common, this might not apply as much, but even then, I still believe this is very important. You should always do your own research. Don't just take one opinion and run with it. Look at different sources, compare information, and try to understand why something works, because that will allow you to solve problems on your own, instead of just copying what someone else tells you to do. If you've ever gotten advice that backfired on you, or something that actually worked really well, leave it in the comments. I'm curious to see what you guys have experienced.